Welcome to prosocial behavior. So, today we're talking about ideas of prosocial and helping type behaviors. But the first thing I want to ask you is, are you attracted to people who are nice? So let me know. It turns out that being nice is not just nice, it's attractive to people. In fact, there are several studies that find that women particularly are attracted to altruistic men. In fact, in at least one study, they found that altruism or being nice is more important than good looks in terms of attraction from women to men, at least. So, why would we not do nice things, and why do we do nice things? First, let's go ahead and define a term. What is pro-social behavior? By pro-social behavior, I'm talking about any behavior that is performed with the goal. You have to have the goal of benefiting another person, right? So you want to intentionally do something that would benefit that person. So, for example, you give a gift, you are intentionally benefiting that person. Now, pro-social behavior is not the same thing as altruism. I'm not saying that you're going to do this behavior because you're truly altruistic. You have no other ulterior motives. Now, sometimes people give gifts, for example, because they don't want to feel guilty or they want to get a gift in return, something like that. So, pro-social behaviors is broader than ideas of altruism. Doing nice things, meaning the goal of benefiting that other person, doesn't necessarily mean that we know what the motive of the person performing the pro-social behavior happens to be. So, why? Why do we help people? So I'm going to ask you, why do you help people? Well, there's several reasons why people help. One has to do with altruistic tendencies compared to egoistic tendencies. So altruistic means you're doing things just because you want that person to be benefited. Egoistic means you're doing something nice for that person because you want something, right? I'm doing that nice thing because of my ego, because of what I want, not just to help that other person. So altruistic versus egoistic is a big debate that was pretty hot a little while ago. It's simmered down a little bit in social psychology, but uh, the question is, why do we do nice things for other people? Is it just because we want to be nice, or do we have other motives? So let's look at a few different perspectives as to why people might help somebody else. One is evolutionary motives. So, one idea might be that we do it because of survival, right? You want to not only survive yourself, but you want to have your genes survive. So, why would I take care of a baby when it costs so much money and stuff, right? Why would I do things just to help a baby out? Well, if that baby happens to have my genes, then maybe it's a good thing because, according to evolutionary theory at least, you have a goal of surviving and passing on your genes. Well, with this involved, we also have kinship selection, which we find that people are more likely to help somebody who is a relative. They share the same genes. So the idea here is I can help people because not only if I help them, they might help me and I might survive, but if I help them, my genes might survive. Now, particularly, I'm more likely to help somebody who shares my genes, who's in my family. Okay, those are evolutionary motives. But there's another motive that is often talked about, and that's called the social exchange. The social exchange is the idea that you help people because you expect something in return. Maybe not immediately, but in general, you expect a social exchange. I do nice things for you, you do nice things for me. You expect an exchange that's going on here. So we call that reciprocal altruism. If I'm being nice to you, then I expect reciprocation. Now, I know that that sounds strange, reciprocal altruism, but if I'm just taking care of you, I expect then that you are taking care of me in return. That's an idea of reciprocal altruism. One thing that's important here is that generally when we're talking about social exchange, they are talking about people doing things with the intent of receiving something in return, right? Not that the person is just going to be nice to you, but you expect them to be nice to you, and that is why you are doing it. The idea then would be that you'd be helping somebody in order to help yourself. I help you because I want you to give me some sort of benefit in return. The intent is my help for you is intending that you're going to help me later on. I expect an exchange. Now, One thing that's involved here is that sometimes the helping oneself can be very subtle. It's not that I'm going to give you a birthday present so that I can get a birthday present in return. Sometimes the helping oneself can be subtle, less obvious reasons why you might help somebody else. So, for example, arousal, right? So, arousal would mean that you get a certain sort of form of arousal when you are benefiting somebody else. This gets a cost reward model, right? Whenever you help someone, there's a certain amount of cost that's involved. If somebody asks you what time is it, then there's a minimal amount of cost, but there is still cost. If you go into a burning building to save somebody trapped inside, there's a lot more cost involved. The reward here would be the reward for either doing what's right or for not feeling bad for not doing it, because you can feel good when you actually do something, and therefore you're saying, oh, I'm going to go help this person because it makes me feel good. Now, people who are strict social exchange would say that's not altruistic because you're doing it in order for you to feel good, not just to help the other person. You're doing it in order for you to feel good. The cost reward model says that we are likely to help other people as long as the benefit, like feeling good, is going to outweigh the cost of whatever happens to be. So I would feel good if I saved some children from a burning building, but would that feeling good be enough for me to risk my life and undergo the cost of going into the burning building? Another benefit that is subtle is that you have a self-perception, a self-concept. And so you want to think that you're awesome, that you are a good person. And so at least part of social exchange would say that you do nice things in order to appear to be good, so that you can say to yourself, oh, I am a good person. And that then benefits you. It's not altruistic. You are trying to appear to be a good person so that you can have a positive self-concept. All right, let's talk about the altruism idea. So Daniel Batson and his colleagues are probably the people who are most likely to advocate for the possibility of true altruism. Now, in this case, true altruism would mean that you're doing things without any intent of a reward. You're doing it just to benefit the other person, not looking at the benefit to yourself at all. The social exchange people are going to say that what you're really doing is by helping somebody else, you're trying to help yourself. So Batson has the empathy altruism hypothesis. This allows for selfless giving. And so what Batson is saying is that when you have empathy, so empathy would be you kind of take the person's point of view, right? You have the cognitive and emotional response to somebody else's distress. So you see someone else, they're in distress, you kind of put yourself in their place. You can understand cognitively and emotionally what they're going through. And by doing that, Batson says that this can lead to an altruistic response. So by taking that other person's perspective, that you imagine yourself in, or someone else in that situation, you are more likely to act to benefit that other person. And it goes one step further. What they're saying is that you're not trying to alleviate any stress, or you're not trying to gain yourself any specific arousal. You just are putting yourself into the other person's point of view. And by doing that, you are willing to or able to help without the intent of benefiting yourself personally, because you can empathize with their point of view. So the empathy altruism hypothesis says that if you have empathy, it allows you to be able to do altruistic acts where you're just acting for the benefit of the other person without thinking of your own benefit. Now, this does not mean, so empathic concerns versus personal distress. So when you're acting with empathic concern, you have sympathy, you have compassion, you have tenderness. It's not the idea that you are personally distressed and you want to alleviate the distress. That's what we were talking about here. You're acting because you just are empathizing. You're just taking that person's point of view. It's not that you're feeling particularly good or bad and want to alleviate that or make yourself feel good. It's just that you're taking that person's point of view. If you do that, then Batson says that you can, not always, but you can act altruistically. Okay, it is possible. Now, the problem here, though, is that when you start talking about things like personal distress, so if I put myself in somebody else's point of view and I feel really icky inside, and so I help so I no longer feel icky inside. That's no longer altruism because I'm doing it so that I can gain the reward of not feeling bad. So let me ask you this. Do you believe that altruism really exists? There's been big debate as to whether or not altruism actually exists or not, distinguishing between those egoistic and altruistic motives. So part of it has to do with how, well, we'll get to the ease of escape in just a second, but does altruism really exist, or do you have to act in some way for your own self-interest? That was a big debate for a while. Let me tell you what I think. I don't care. If people are doing really nice things, so you see a puppy and that puppy is trapped under a log, and you help that puppy, I don't really care if it makes you feel good. I care that you did a nice thing and it's good for the puppy. And fine, I'm glad that you feel good about it. I don't think that you did it just to feel good. Perhaps you did. But if good things are happening, then I don't really care if somebody gets some nice warm feeling from it or feels less distress at imagining themselves in the same point of view. It doesn't matter to me. I think it's totally fine. It doesn't matter. Now, for the record, I will say I do think that people can act altruistically, but I think that the process of going through whether or not altruism really exists, I think that for the most part, it is just wasted effort. Because if people happen to feel good when they're doing nice things, so much the better. So much the better. It's not like you should feel guilty because you're not truly altruistic, because that becomes a tautology by itself, right? I don't care. I don't care. Because if people are doing nice things, let them feel good about it. It's great. All right. This is getting at the idea of how easy it is to get out of a situation, right? So why do people help? Now, altruism aside, people are less likely to help if they can get out of it. Now, what do I mean by that? If it's easy to let somebody else do it, or if it's not clearly their responsibility, people are less likely to help. So let's ask you this question. Oh, sorry, we got to do individual differences. I forgot about that one. So here's some differences that lead to people to help or not help, and then we'll get to some more ideas of how many people are around, et cetera. So gender differences. It is true that women are more likely to help in long-term nurturing relationships, but there is some evidence that men are more likely to try and help in short-term things that require bigger behaviors, like literally like heroic act type stuff. So the kind of helping kind of depends. So there does seem to be some gender differences in the way people go about helping. I'm not saying that men can't be long-term and nurturing. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm not saying that women can't be heroic. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in general, evidence has been found that women are more likely to help in long-term nurturing ways. Men are more likely to help compared to women when we're talking about one-time heroic type act. There does seem to be personality types that do lend themselves to being altruistic or not, right? So think about, Mother Teresa versus an Osama bin Laden. There seems to be certain personality types that tend to be more likely to be helpful and others that are less likely to be prosocial. Okay. By the way, though, that is not enough by itself. I got to be very careful. Remember, every behavior is a function of the person by the situation. And so that personality by itself is not sufficient to predict whether or not somebody's going to help in any given situation. The situation is often very strong. Let's give some more stuff. Mood. Okay, people are more likely to help when they feel good. They're also more likely to help when they feel bad, but let's talk about this in just a second. So if people are in a positive mood, the idea is feel good, do good, right? So people with a positive mood can increase helping because it allows them to keep focusing on positive things. So if I'm in a really good mood and I'm helping other people, hey, it helps me focus on more positive things, maintain my good mood, which is that next part, prolonging one's own good mood. Also, people tend to pay more attention to themselves. So what we're talking about in this particular case is if I'm feeling good, and I'm like, oh, hey, I'm feeling great. Let's go do some good things for other people. Then we are going to be able to have more positive results in your behavior. Okay. There's other evidence that finds that people also do good when they're in a bad mood. So if I'm feeling really good, I'm going to help. But also, if I'm feeling really bad, sometimes I'm more likely to help. That is, I'm feeling really bad. I need to do something nice so that I can feel better. This is the negative state relief hypothesis. Remember when we talked about the idea that, ooh, if I'm thinking about what situation you're in, that makes me feel bad, I'm going to help you. Well, Cialdini et al. Came up with the negative state relief hypothesis. What they're saying is that you help people in order to alleviate your own stress. So if I see somebody who's in a lot of pain, right, then I feel bad. And the reason why I help is so that I don't have to feel bad anymore. It's to alleviate the negative, right? I'm feeling bad, and that feeling bad drives me to help other people. So it is true that we have found that people who feel good do good. That is true. But it is also true that feeling bad can lead people to do good. And specifically, you should know about the negative state relief hypothesis. When you're thinking about somebody's bad situation, makes you feel bad, and so you help in order to help yourself feel better. Okay, interpersonal influences. There's some other things that are going to get you some help if you need it. One is physical attractiveness. If you are more physically attractive, you're going to get more help. I'm sorry. Similarity. People tend to help others who are more similar to them, like on demographics. So think about cultural similarity, racial similarity, that kind of stuff. So racial similarity, etc. Men tend to help women more, right? So men are more likely to help women than they are to help other men. So keep that in mind. Mimicry. Now this is an interesting one. So we are more likely to help somebody if we even do subtle mimicry. So there's a time when mimicry studies were quite popular. And what they found is that just mirroring somebody's actions, not like intentionally, but if you sit across from somebody and they cross your legs and you cross your legs too, you are mimicking them, right? Now, I'm not saying mock them, mimic them. You don't make it obvious, but just subtly mimicking so they don't even notice. Studies have found that if you subtly mimic someone else, then you're more likely to be helped by that someone. Okay, attribution of responsibility. So remember attribution? We're trying to figure out why people do what they do. Well, if somebody does something and you determine their bad outcome based off of their own behavior, right? So let's say that you might encounter somebody who's homeless and you decide, oh, they made the choices that made them homeless, right? Then what you're doing is ascribing an internal reason for that person's outcome, for their behavior. When people attribute the victim as being responsible for their situation, they're less likely to help. This gets to an idea called the belief in a just world, right? So there's a general belief that a lot of people share that the world is a just place in general. And that means that if something bad happened to somebody, it must be because they deserved it. And if they deserved it, then why is it my place to help them get out of something they deserved? So if you attribute the responsibility for the negative outcome to their person, then you're less likely to help. Social learning. We tend to help more if we're in a community that helps more, right? If your community has a culture of helping other people, then you socially learn it. You just do it more. You are more likely to help because that is a cultural norm in whatever group we're talking about. Okay, let me ask you this then. Are you more likely to be helped? So imagine yourself in a situation where you need some help. Are you more likely to get help when there's more people around or fewer people around? The answer is you are more likely to be helped if there are fewer people around. So let's talk about this. Why don't people help when there's a lot? Often you're in an urban setting. So I don't know if you've ever done this before, but if you've been in a crowded place and then you saw somebody, maybe they're like, you know, maybe they're asleep or maybe they're passed out and you can't quite tell, but everybody's walking around them and you're like, gosh, I don't think I'm going to help that person. Why might that be? Well, one idea is that there's urban overload. There's so much going on that you don't really think about it because there's just all this stuff and you can't really focus on helping somebody. So if you're constantly being bombarded with stimulations, and often these are people in need of help, then you're overwhelmed and you just don't listen anymore. The bystander effect by Latane and Darley has to do with this idea of people not helping when there's more people around. So this is the idea of bystanders not helping. Now, this does come from ideas of a real life situation where Kitty Genovese was killed in a New York outside a New York apartment building when we know that people heard her being attacked by someone. Now, in real life, it wasn't quite that way. There actually were people who called out, who helped, who did a couple of things. They didn't actually go out and get rid of the murderer, right? He did murder her, and she was screaming for help. That is true. But there are some. It's not just people were never going to help, right? But it did lead to a field of research on the bystander effect, saying why would people just stand by when somebody else needs help? So the bystander effect is that the greater the number of bystanders witnessing an emergency, the less likely any one person is going to help. We are going to watch, or we're going to go through the steps of the bystander effect, right? These are the things that you have to go through in order to help someone. And these steps make you less likely to help the more people are around. So the first thing is you got to notice that there is an emergency going on. Remember that idea of urban overload, right? An emergency happens, the first thing you got to do is notice it. If there's a lot of people around, you're just less likely to even notice that something happened, right? So think about this. Think about like you're driving on the freeway in a crowded city. There's cars everywhere. You're just less likely to see a person who is pulled over on the side of the road. But if you're in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, you're going to notice when somebody's pulled over on the side of the road. So if you're distracted, then you're not likely to notice the event, and so you're not likely to help. Okay? Even if you do notice the event, you've then got to interpret it as an emergency. So have you ever been in a place and you're like, gosh, I see that person, do they need help? There's something called pluralistic ignorance. Pluralistic ignorance is when I think I'm different from the group, but I'm wrong. That's the ignorance part. So I think I'm different from the group, but I'm wrong, right? So I think that I'm the only one noticing that this guy might need help. This guy who's passed out over here, okay? I'm wrong about that because other people are also noticing. What makes it pluralistic is that lots of people can be thinking the same thing. Pluralistic ignorance is when we think we're different, but we're wrong, and it's a plurality of people in the group who feel that way, meaning there's lots of people who feel that way. So, you know this, right? So you're in a class and the teacher says, any questions? And you're like, I have no idea what's going on, but nobody else is raising their hand, so I'm not going to raise my hand because I would be weird, right? What you're saying is, I feel like I don't understand. I'm different from the group. But you're wrong about that because in reality, there's probably a lot of people in that class who are doing the same thing. Like, I don't know what's going on. But nobody else is raising their hand, so I'm not going to raise my hand. It's pluralistic because lots of people feel that way. Lots of people feel like they're different from everybody else, and they're wrong about it. So with an emergency, what happens is you see somebody passed out on the side of the road. You're like, gosh, I think that might be an emergency. Is that an emergency? And you look around and nobody else is helping. You're like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's not an emergency. In reality, everybody's like, gosh, I think this might be an emergency, but is it an emergency? And nobody stops, and so nobody thinks that it's an emergency because everybody else is looking to everybody else to figure out whether it's an emergency. Pluralistic ignorance leads you to be less likely to interpret an event as an emergency. If you are in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, and somebody's passed out on the side of the road, then you can't look to other people. You've got to interpret it as an emergency yourself. Even if you do interpret it as an emergency, you then have to assume responsibility, like that person needs help. But it's not really my job. I'm sure that somebody else who knows CPR is more likely to come by pretty soon, right? when we diffuse the responsibility, when there's lots of people around, it's easy for us to say, oh, you know, that is an emergency, but I'm sure that other people are much more likely to help and much more able to help than I am, right? When you do that, you're diffusing your responsibility. You're much more likely to do that in a big group than you are in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska. Doesn't matter because you're the only person who's going to drive by this person who's stranded. So even if you're not a mechanic, you're going to say, I better help because nobody else is going to drive by. Then, even if you assume responsibility, you got to know the appropriate form of assistance. You're like, yes, this is an emergency. Yes, I should do something, but I don't know what to do. If you don't know what to do, you might say, hey, I have a lack of competence. Yes, I should. It is my responsibility. I should stop and help out, but I don't know how to fix the car, right? That allows you to get away from it. But if you're in the middle of nowhere, then you're the only one available. You better do something because you're the last one. And then the last thing is that you're actually going to implement the decision. And this is less likely if there is a higher cost of helping for people to help out, right? So for example, if you feel like you might embarrass yourself or something like that in a big group, then there's a higher cost of helping. Versus in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, you better help because no one else is coming around. So in each one of these steps, these are all part of bystander intervention. You're less likely to help when there's a lot of other people around because you're less likely to notice the event. You're less likely to interpret as an emergency. You're less likely to assume responsibility. You're less likely to know the appropriate form of assistance and actually implement it if there are lots of other people around. When there are fewer people around, then you are more likely to do those things. So if you are ever in a situation where there's a lot of people around and you personally need help, here's what you do. You say, this is an emergency, right? So that people, number one, they hear you, they have to notice you. Number two, they know it's an emergency because you tell them. Number three, assign responsibility. You say, hey, you in the red shirt, go and then tell them what to do. Call 911, right? So you give the responsibility, you tell them what to do, and they're much more likely to implement that situation. All right, thanks everybody.